But before I get going, I'm just going to ask, and I think there is a mic there, for each of the executives from Premier Fishing at least just to introduce themselves in case you want to ask any questions later. Um, Maybe start with you, Samir, so we can work it back.
My name is Samir Saban. I'm the CEO of Premier Fishing and Brands Limited.
Tatin, speak into the mic in case you...
Okay, my name is Tatenda. I'm the CFO of Premier Fishing and Brands Limited.
Hi, I'm Rishan Isaacs, the Sales and Marketing Director.
Sean Barner, the South Coast Rock Lobster Operations Manager.
Sean Solomon, West Coast Rock Lobster Operations Manager.
Thank you, guys. The reason I introduced them is that any hard questions you can ask them directly, right? That's an instruction from Samir. So thank you for attending. Without further ado, I'm going to call Samir up, maybe to take you through the results, and he will handle some questions afterwards. Eh?
Thank you, Khalid. Also, just good morning and to our viewers as well up in Johannesburg. Are we on? My presentation content for this morning is going to cover the following items: Premier Fishing and Brands business overview, introduction, divisional overview, 2017 key highlights, key competitive advantages, 2017 performance review. Then our CFO will come in and do the financial review. Myself will go back into the strategy and growth, acquisition, and then questions to the floor. Just who are we? Premier Fishing is a vertically integrated fishing group specializing in the harvesting, processing, and marketing and sales of fish-related species. Some key characteristics noted are we're the largest black-owned and managed fishing company in South Africa, in existence since 1952. A well-diversified product basket, which consists of rock lobster, octopus, squid, cultivated farmed abalone, pilchards, anchovy, hake. We're currently employing more than 380 employees. We are accredited with all the major South African regulatory institutes such as the FDA, NRCS, HACCP, and SAFE. Just a very high-level overview what the business is about. We've got two lobster operations. The one on top is our lobster that operates out of the Victoria and Alfred waterfront, which Sean is the operations executive. We've got 6 vessels operating. Our brand, South Atlantic. The products are currently sold in USA, China, Japan, Hong Kong, and in Europe. Squid, our operation is out in Port Elizabeth. We operate 4 vessels. We operate under the Sea Diamond brand. Our markets where we sell the product is Italy, Spain, Greece, Croatia, and Portugal. Just a slight thing, the hake, we've got a joint venture with Oceana. We've got 1 vessel, and we sell under the Premier Fishing brand. And the markets where we sell the product is predominantly in the European market. The pelagic side, we've got 1 processing plant in Saldanha. We operate 4 vessels. Our brand is SSF, and that's basically all sold in the local market. And then we've got the cultivated abalone farm, which is out in Gansbaai. We've got 1 processing plant. The brand that we operate under is Atlantic Abalone. Our markets are China, Japan, Hong Kong, and Taiwan. Just some key highlights from the 2017 financial year under review. Successfully listed Premier Fishing and Brands Limited on the 2nd of March 2017. Capital raised on listing 526.5 million in cash. Our revenue increased this year to 411 million rand. Gross margins at the moment at 44%. Operating margin 16%. And consistently increasing our third-party contracted fish that we're buying year on year. That will be covered later on in some of our organic strategy. Profit before tax increased by 28% from 74 million to 95 million. Normalized EPS and headline earnings per share increased by 31 and 33% respectively. Some of our key advantages: we are the largest black-owned and managed fishing group in South Africa. We control 60% of the South African rock lobster market, which is exported to the USA, 95%. We currently hold 17% of the West Coast rock lobster in South Africa, which is predominantly exported to China, and that's in live. We hold 7% of the total pilchard quota, and that is the third single largest allocated quota in South Africa. Consistent high quality products delivered to all our customers. We own and control top class production facilities nationally. All of our facilities are EU, FDA, and SABS NRCS approved. Trusted strong brands that have been developed over many, many decades. An experienced and dynamic management team, and significant organic growth over the past 5 years. Just a bit of highlights, just generally across all of our sectors, with the exception of the pilchard side. Strong performance across all of our divisions. Main reasons were good catch rates and sizes landed, good stable pricing on most of our products, good and stable performance in our abalone division, good operating efficiencies and synergies across all the divisions. Some of the lowlights, obviously I spoke earlier on the lower landings industry-wide in the pilchard side, and as everyone knows, the exchange rate uncertainty that no one can really predict at this point in time. I'm going to call up the CFO just to take us through the financial overview, and I'll come back to look at the strategy and the growth.
Okay, now for the most interesting stuff. We had quite a good year. Our headline earnings are up about 70 million compared to 52 million in the prior year. That's 33% increase. And our GP margin, or gross profit, has been up 11% from last year, 180 million in the current year compared to 162. The main reason being that we had good catch rates in our lobster and squid division, which ultimately resulted in a reduction in our landed cost per kilogram. And also we managed to extract some efficiencies out of our abalone farm with the solar plant, which resulted in savings in our energy costs. Obviously electricity is a major cost for our abalone farm, as well as we managed to construct a live pack facility at the abalone farm. So previously we used to outsource the packing for live abalone. So now we are doing it in-house, and we've almost saved about 50% of the cost. And then obviously all these operating efficiencies also resulted in our profit before tax increasing by about 28% in the current year. Then in terms of our financial position, we have quite a strong financial position in the current year. Obviously, we listed and we raised about 526 million in cash. Some of it has been utilized in the current year. Samir will talk about it a little bit later on, as well as the future plans going forward from the cash that we managed to raise. Then in terms of our cash flow generation, we generated about 41 million from operations compared to 58 million from the prior year. On a normalized basis, our cash generated from operations is up 61 million compared to 58 million. Strategically, we are focusing on increasing third-party quota holders to increase our revenue and margins. So we made a little bit of advances to offset quota holders in the last month of the financial year, which is that 20 million that you see over there. Most of that money will be recovered by November, December, when the fishing season starts. it normally starts in the middle of November. Then this is our revenue per division or per product. As you can see, we had good catch rates in squid, which so our main increase in revenue comes from the squid and also from the third-party quota holders, which is that processing and marketing revenue. Other than that, the revenue has been stable. Obviously, there's been a bit of an impact on the exchange rate, but as Samir alluded to before, we had good pricing across all our divisions, which helped to mitigate against the downward side of the exchange rate. In the prior year, we averaged about 15 to the dollar, and this year we averaged about 13.1, 13.2 to the dollar.
But just to add on that, you'll see the bulk of the revenue in all of our sectors are up, with the exception of the pelagic side.
And the pelagic is purely because of the pilchards, and the pilchards, the catching for the pilchards has been down industry-wide. Then this is our geographic spread of our revenue. The South Coast rock lobster is sold into Northern America, squid and hake into Europe, West Coast mainly into Asia, and we do a little bit in South Africa, the pilchards and anchovies in South Africa, and a little bit of hake as well locally. This is our geographic spread of revenue. About 70% of our revenue is export, with most of it coming from Northern America and Far East.
So just to add on that slide, you'll see there hasn't been a change since 2016 and 2017. Basically, the spread amongst the South Africa, North America, and Far East and Europe has been quite stable, but it's a well-diversified market where our product is actually sold. We are not focused just on one country, so it's a nice split, 29% in the Far East, 29% in North America, 29% in South Africa, and then 15% in Europe.
And that's the revenue per species. Most of our revenue is generated from lobster and pelagics and farmed abalone. The spread has been consistent, but Samir will talk strategically about where we plan to go in terms of our revenue spread per species going forward into the future. Then that's our segmental profit. As you can see, we had quite a significant increase in our profits from the lobster and the squid, and our processing and marketing, which also comes from the fantastic catch rates that we experienced in our lobster division and in our squid division. The pelagics profit is down because of that pilchards catches. And that's the operating profit per segment. We generate over 43% from the lobster and 20% from the pelagics. So most of our operating profit is generated purely from those three divisions: lobster, pelagics, and hake. And in terms of what we had said in our pre-listing statement, we managed to achieve our forecast as per the pre-listing statement in terms of the profit before tax, and also profit after tax, and our EPS as well. On the previous slide, before I forget, on the revenue, we had EPS of 34 cents and the prior 36 cents. The decrease of 6% is purely because of the share issue that happened in the current year with the listing. And that's it from my side. Mr. Samir.
Thank you, Mr. Bundo. Just to follow on from Mr. Bundo, we will go into our strategy and our growth. Where are we focusing on to get growth in the organization? We're obviously focusing on two basic fundamental areas. Is basically the organic part of the business as well as acquisitive growth. And if I break that down, organically, we look currently in progress with the abalone expansion, and that will be our key focus for the next 2 years. We'll be tripling our hatchery capacity to meet production demands with the new farm. We're currently on track with the expansion plans to be completed by 2019-2020 to produce up to 320 tons on the farm. Purchase of third-party quota, that will be focusing on year to increase and buy contracted quota year on year. And then on the acquisition side, we will target strategic companies that will improve our diversity and increase our shareholder value. Just to speak a bit about the acquisition that was announced last week, you must have seen in the media itself. It's a company called Tolado. They currently operate out in Port Elizabeth. They are the largest squid player in the South African market. We bought a majority stake between 50.01 to about 54%. I'm quite happy to do questions after the meeting one-on-one just to go through the deal in more detail. The price for the just the 50.1% was 100 million. The price earnings that we bought the business was between 4 to 6 times. The current revenue for 2017 for the business, 309 million revenue, and a PAT of 50 million rand for 2017. Just a bit more detail on the asset base. They operate out of PE. They currently operate 18 vessels in operation. They approximately employ 400 employees, land-based and production facilities in Port Elizabeth Harbour, cold storage facilities in Port Elizabeth, and we also expect significant synergies between our squid operation and the squid operation of Tolado. They're currently doing on average, and this is an effort-based fishery, it's not a quota-based fishery, and they're currently doing plus minus about 2,500 to 3,000 tons of squid, where we're currently doing about 200 to 250 tons. Just a bit of detail on the funds that we've raised thus far, what we have spent, and we've spent up to about 8 million by August 2017. By December 2017, let me just go a bit forward. This is basically a graphical representation of our abalone farm, and this part here is our existing farm where we currently have 120 tons of abalone. That's the 6-hectare farm. As you can see, the drawings of all the tanks over there. That's the small piece of land that's also in development. Where are we at the moment? Here was an open piece of land just behind our live pack facility. That has been completed. Right on top, on that section there, that will be completed in 1 week's time. That will give us an extra 15 ton. This construction is in progress and should be done by about Jan-Feb, and then probably we'll be spending up to, by December, about 60, 70 million rand. And this as well will run in parallel, and we expect the big development to be completed by December 2018. Just a much better view. So, let me just get to that. So this again here, this is our existing farm where we're currently operating. That's part of the development, a small piece on this side here, and just behind our live pack. And this is obviously going to be the big development on the 6-hectare farm. It's just some architectural drawings. And then some good news, the board of directors have declared a dividend of 15 cents per share. That's actually a dividend yield of 3.3%, actually higher because if you look at Premier, it's just been listed for about 6 months. So you can actually double that, which is much higher than the 3.3%. And just highlights again from the pre-listing statement and what we actually produce. So on the EBITDA line, 80 million in line with the 80 million on the PLS. Profit after tax, actually 68 million. Pre-listing statement, 65 million. EPS, 33.7 cents compared to the PLS, 33 cents. EPS, 34.59 compared to 33 cents. Abalone stock growth, we initially forecasted to have 11 tons on our growth side. we actually came in at 23 tons. That's obviously quite key for the expansion drive on the farm. And one key thing is obviously you want to get your pipeline up as quickly as possible to get up to the 320 tons as fast as possible. And then the dividend per share, 15% actually, and what we are going to be declaring at year end. Just highlighting again on the income statement. So on the revenue side, 410 million, gross profit percentage 44%, profit before tax 94.8 million compared to 73.5 million in the prior year, profit margins 23% compared to 18%, and then headline earnings per share of 34.59 compared to 36.73. Any questions?
Can I just ask you to introduce yourself as well?
My name is Johan Blash. I'd like to ask you just about the sustainability of your resource, especially the rock lobster. What's the future hold for taking out this volume of rock lobster that you're taking out at the moment? Thank you.
Okay. I'm just going to go back quickly to our slide where our basket of goods are so I can. On the lobster side, our lobster business is broken up into two lobster sectors. We've got the South Coast rock lobster sector, which is very, very strong at the moment. It's more than 40% of Pristine, if I'm correct, 42%. And that is one of our biggest lobster businesses. The West Coast rock lobster, which you allude to, which has got, there is debates in the market whether the West Coast is under pressure. Definitely it is. Government is obviously trying to bring in a target recovery strategy by looking at various statistical modeling, either to drop down the TAC year on year until the resource basically grows up. But fundamentally in our business, the West Coast rock lobster with this acquisition will actually become about 6-7% of Premier Fishing itself. However, Premier Fishing, as one of the largest fishing companies in South Africa, likewise with Oceana and Lusitania, we belong to various industry associations, and we're obviously trying to assist government as well to try and get the resource back up to the levels that will be comfortable to us. But there is an issue with that, and we are working with government, with industry, etc.
Hi, my name is Okkert Goosen. Two questions. The first is, which of these businesses are subject to quotas? And secondly, whether your abalone business has been hit by the red tide.
So just again on this side, the lobster is driven by a TAC, which is driven by quotas. So that's on a total allowable catch. The pelagic side as well. The hakes, in fact, all of them. But let me explain to you, the squid business operates on an effort basis, meaning it's not capped. For example, if Joe Bloggs gets a quota of 100 tons for lobster, he's only allowed to pull out 100 tons out of the water. Where unlike the squid side, it's an effort-based fishery. You go out, you catch as much as you can. Our abalone business is obviously farm. That's not capped by the quota side. Our abalone business was not impacted by the red tide, and that's evident from our numbers, as you can see, coming through 13.21 million on the operating profit side, and we actually had stock growth of about 23 tons on the farm. We actually had a week in advance notice. The rare tide came out in the Hermanus area, and we had a week's notice, and we obviously put plans in place to ensure that we minimize whatever impact, but there's been no financial impact on our farm per se.
Thank you, guys. Thank you. Are there any more questions? We normally allow at least 5, but hopefully you all are happy with what you saw. And Samir has answered all the... Sorry, there's one more question there.
Hi, it's Chris Logan. Just, you say your squid's effort-based.
Yeah.
And squid's obviously going to be big in the new year with your acquisition. Is there danger that with all the effort you're putting in, the resource is going to plummet at some stage? And what's the history been of the resource?
If you look at the acquisition that we've done, that company has always been inside there. So the effort is not going to actually increase because it's also driven by permits as well. So if you look at like in any fishing, whether it's lobster, squid, hake, it is cyclical. But generally the squid resource is a strong resource. One year you'll find that the effort is maybe low. For example, over the last year or so, it's been quite good. The season has just started, it's closed now for 1 month, and the signs are also looking good. But if you normalize that out over the, let me say, the allocation period, you'll actually find that it's quite strong. West Coast is the only one at the moment, the West Coast rock lobster, where there are issues, but ourselves as industry, government, and companies are working together to ensure that we actually bring that resource back up to sustainable levels.
And then maybe just one more question on that acquisition. Obviously, it's quite accretive based on the low PE, but will there also be cost savings and synergies? Will you be able to combine offices and stuff?
Yeah, if you look at it, it's not, if I go back to the slide, if you look at the price earnings is actually based on an historical multiple of about 4 to 6 times. Yes, there is going to be synergies. We're currently running our squid operation out in Humansdorp. So there is a potential to bring that obviously into the Delado stable. So definitely from a cost saving perspective, is definitely on the table. We will see some benefits coming out there.
Thanks.
Any further questions? Samir hasn't been tested, so... But anyway, thanks again for your time, guys. And if there's any other questions you want to ask anybody specifically, again, I mean, there's the tender as the group CFO. Roshan is the sales and marketing person. Sean Barner, who particularly with operations and specifically the rock lobster, the South Coast rock lobster. Then there's Sean Solomons as well on the West Coast rock lobster. So if you want any specific detailed questions, you're happy to talk to them as well and mingle around. But again, thanks for your time, and we do appreciate it. And thanks for your support. We're looking forward to 2018 already. Okay, thanks.